There's something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear.
All right, we are here for episode 7. Count them 7. So most podcasts stop at 6. We're at 7, so I'm excited about that. Of Lexington Behind the Curtain. And our guest tonight is the Honorable Judge Pamela Goodwine. And we were talking off camera that we've known each other for a little over 20 years. And
Correct.
we actually met at a fundraiser back in 3 when you were running for circuit. And I followed your career. And I remember the day I met you, you're this tiny little woman, but you're a Spitfire, and you've obviously done great things in your life. So I wanted you to give the opportunity here to talk to our listeners and maybe your base of people, and let's talk about Pam and what the world needs to know. So I normally at this point kind of let you give your resume and talk about how you got here, and then we'll talk about Lexington and some of the other great things that we've got going on.
Okay. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for asking me to come and to participate in the podcast. I think this is a great idea, and I'm really, really happy to participate. I love telling my story. I love telling people who I am and how I came to be in Lexington. And it's interesting because I grew up in northeastern Ohio. I don't know if you knew
Youngstown,
yeah. Ohio. And I, when I was growing up, I guess it was about age 16 or so when I started thinking about my career and what I wanted to do. And whatever career path I chose in high school, we were in high school, and they said, well, you got to go interview someone in that,
kind of like we're doing here.
Kind of like what we're doing here. And I told my parents I wanted to be a judge. So I had to find my way to the courthouse in Youngstown, Ohio to interview a judge.
Oh, that's cool.
And I was so alarmed, I guess, when I walked into the courthouse, and there was no one that looked like me.
Yeah.
There were no women. There were no African Americans. This was in 76, 77.
Okay. Well, I was born in 75, so
Yeah.
I get you.
76, 77. And they were quite annoyed with me, or, how dare you, think
wow.
that you're going to, become part of our, men's
Protected
club,
circle, yeah.
protected circle, if you will. And that just sort of fueled that fire in me. And I went home and I was like, Daddy, guess what they said about me at the courthouse? And
Made you want to do it more.
made me want to do it more. And I worked hard. I graduated valedictorian of my class. We grew up it was in the inner city, but was sort of upper middle class, or so I thought. Of course, never wanted for anything as a child. And upon graduation as valedictorian, I had a full honor scholarship.
Nice.
Basically, any university that I wanted to go to. I chose Carnegie Mellon, but I never got to go. That summer, as I was preparing to go to college, my father was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I was born into foster care. They were my foster parents who decided at 5 weeks old that they wanted to adopt me.
Oh, wow.
After raising their children. They had two grown.
I lost my mother to lung cancer.
Yeah. They had
right before COVID.
Oh, yeah. Wow. They had, it's so hard.
Yeah.
It is so hard. I was 18, and my adopted father and I were very, very close. So I forfeited my scholarship to stay home and take care of him. But while I was doing so, knowing that I wanted to go to law school, wanted to become a judge, I had to figure out a way to pay for that.
Right.
So I went and enrolled in technical school. And I got an associate degree in court stenography. Okay. And learned how to become a court reporter and sit in the court.
Bootstraps, right?
Bootstraps.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was a very lucrative career at the time, and they were looking for freelance court reporters. And 6 months after my dad died, I graduated and got a job offer that same day in Lexington, Kentucky.
Oh, cool. Had
never been here. Was a little concerned. I thought it was a little closer to Cincinnati than it actually was. Imagine driving across the bridge and 75 more miles to go. But came here. It was in the fall. It was beautiful. The horse farms and just the scenic views that I had just getting from the interstate to my apartment. And I started out freelancing. I was given a map. This was before Google Maps.
Oh, sure.
And, Siri wasn't around. Siri wasn't around at that time. And so I had to learn how to read a map and navigate my way through the 120 counties. And absolutely, 120 counties.
Wow, that's a lot.
And I would get a call to go to Stanton or Williamsburg, Williamstown. And it was interesting because oftentimes someone would get them mixed up. And like Stanton and Stanford.
Oh, it's a pain. We do it because we service both those areas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you understand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes having to find a shortcut because you go to the wrong location. But I was here enjoying my career. I enrolled at UK, the University of Kentucky, in 1980 in January, and was here 6 months when my mother was killed. She was shot and killed. She was murdered.
That's horrible. I didn't know that.
Back in Ohio. And as you can imagine, Jamie, being 19 and having lost both your parents to tragedy. And so it was very, very difficult. And now I'm dealing with the criminal justice system in Ohio, trying to navigate that, victims' families' point of view, and becoming more and more irritated as we navigated through that process. Things didn't turn out the way we had hoped, but he pled mentally incompetent to stand trial, was committed, released, killed somebody else, recommitted, but then died in his sleep before he ever went to trial for her murder. And so, I'm a freshman in college, very just lost at that point, and continued to work. But as the year went by, I started to get very sick. And I'm thinking it's traveling, it's grief, it's a lot of different things. But the more I deteriorated and the more doctors I saw, we realized it wasn't grief, that there was something seriously wrong. And after a couple of more years, I ended up going, when UK and Lexington Clinic couldn't diagnose what I had, I went to Chicago, Northwestern University. And I was there for a week when they diagnosed me with an advanced stage of Crohn's disease. And he said, this is so far advanced that you are going to die. If you do not if you do not have surgery within the next month or so, you're likely not going to make it. So I had to come back to Lexington. But by this time, and this part of what I like to call my testimony or my story, I had stopped freelancing because I didn't want to be sick and strained in accounting.
That makes sense.
So, but I was lucky enough to get a job at Fayette Circuit Court as a court reporter. But Jamie, I was only there for 29 days before I was unable to work. And I say that because had I managed to work one more day, I would have had health insurance.
That's awful.
I didn't have health insurance. And when I came back to Lexington from Chicago, I couldn't get into a hospital because I didn't have health insurance. And so I had to navigate other means and ended up with a grant from the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Because I needed the surgery to get back to work. And so fall of 84, November, I went into the hospital to figure this out. And my doctor, Dr. William Walton, was a famous surgeon, or I call him famous, but he was a very good surgeon at Lexington Clinic, was my doctor. And he said I was too young to have an ileostomy. He didn't want to do that, so he was going to shut my system down, which he did. But 4 days later, things went terribly wrong, and I started hemorrhaging. And it was, to hear a doctor say, you need to call your family.
That's tough.
We need to call your minister because we don't know if you're going to make it through the night. We have to cut you back open because we don't know where this bleeder is, and your likelihood of surviving is slim.
That's horrible.
And, but at that point, I was at such peace. That.
So, you're maybe 20 at this point?
I was 24.
24.
I was 24, and I was at peace. And I said, if God's ready for me, then I'm ready to go. I said, but if he isn't, then look out, world, because here comes Pam, right? And I was in a coma for 4.5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And when I woke up, the doctors were like, this is touch and go. We don't know when or if you're going to survive this or if you're going to leave the hospital. And I'm like, well, but I got to finish school. I got to go to law. I'm going to law. I got things to do, and Dr. Walton was like, Pam, you really need to not stress out about getting out of here. You really need to focus on your health. And And so I was at that stage, I was in the hospital for another 4 weeks or so. I left in February of 85 and went through rehab until I could get back to work. I wasn't 100% healthy, but went back to work, and I said my goal was to work long enough to get insurance and to get healthy enough to where if I needed more surgery that I would be able to have it. And so one thing that I realized though, Jamie, was that I was just existing.
Yeah.
I was heavily medicated. Although I was able to do my job, I wasn't living. I was in a lot of pain. I was heavily medicated. And finally, in May of 86, I was at 25. I told Dr. Walton that I wanted him to completely remove my colon. I wanted him to perform the complete ileostomy. In fact, I told him to take out everything I didn't need to actually live because it was just in the way. You know, it was causing me more problems. And so in May of 86, he performed a complete ileostomy. And I woke up the next day, like, I just knew that I was better.
Going to be okay.
I was going to be okay. And again, Dr. Walton was being very cautious, saying, you know, Crohn's disease is not curable.
Yeah.
This is just in surgical remission. You're still on medication. And I said, well, when can I go back to school? When can I go back to work? And again, he's saying, you really need to not worry about that.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I'm a woman. He said, well, you need to live a stress-free life. And I was like, well, woman, do you know that lives a stress-free life?
Yeah.
That's not possible. Again, a few more, you know, another round of intensive rehab. I literally had to learn how to comb my hair, how to feed myself, and all of that. Well, Fayette Circuit Court phased out court reporting, much to my chagrin. They went video.
Okay.
And so at that time, and I became a legal secretary. I was hired by a judge to be her legal secretary. And I shared my vision, my dream with her, that I wanted to be a judge and that I needed to finish school. And she said, well, do what you need to do. You know, if you need to change your hours or whatever you need to do. Well, in the fall of 87, I couldn't drive. I still couldn't drive. And so I walked to UK. And I remember walking to Gatton College of Business and meeting with Dean First and said, put me on the lifetime plan because I'm gonna graduate. If it takes the rest of my life, I'll take one class at a time. Yeah. And so I did that for 4 years. And so it took me 4 years to finish those last 2 years. But in May of 1991, when I graduated from undergrad, I knew that I knew that my dream was gonna come true. And I met with Dr. Walton and I said, I'm gonna stop taking this medication and I'm gonna go to law school in the fall and I'm not gonna, see you anymore. Now, I'm not advocating that people not listen to their doctors, but you know what I mean? I'd stopped taking the steroids and the opioids and all of that. And I entered law school in the fall of 94 or in the fall of 91 at 31. And people said I was too old to go to law school. They said, you're going to be 34. You're going to compete with these 20-somethings. And I thought, well, I'm going to be 34 anyway. If I live, let me graduate.
Well, and those 20-somethings don't have that focus that you've got at this point.
Correct. And so when I graduated from law school, I thought I was going to prosecute. So I went to Ray Larson, who was the Commonwealth attorney at the time, and I was like, given my history, I want to prosecute. I thought that was going to be my pathway to the bench. Yeah. But there were no openings. And so I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? I interviewed with Wyatt Terrett & Combs. They're a large, great firm. And I remember in the interview, they asked me what I wanted to do with my law degree. And I said, I want to be a justice on the Kentucky Supreme Court. And they just kind of looked like, I said it as just as a matter of fact. And they said, well, we don't have one of those here, but if you want to be an entry-level associate, we, love to have you. And so I said, okay. I didn't know. I had clerked for them after my first year and had a great summer. Yeah. And so they hired me.
There's a lot of great lawyers came out of that firm.
A lot of great lawyers. And they said, but if you're truly interested in becoming a judge, then we can help you with the political side of it.
Right.
Because they had former governors and mayors and a lot of elected officials that came through Wyatt. And so they basically took me by the hand and introduced me to the powers that be and said, if this is what you want,
Greasing the rails.
if this is what you want, then let's do it. And I had a wonderful career there. I traveled. I did labor and employment defense, and I covered the Southeast region, Kentucky, Georgia, Northern South Carolina, and Florida. That's where our client was at the time. And it was great. I was single at the time and just I had a really great career. And in 99, I had a vacancy came on the Fayette District Court. And they said, well, the governor's going to appoint somebody. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know, I didn't have any idea. And so
help me with the hierarchy of the circuit district.
So district court is the lowest level. That's your court of misdemeanor, traffic court, and small claims, forcible detainers, civil matters of $5,000 or less.
Okay.
And so that came in 99. I did get the appointment, and I had 9 opponents in that race. And we had 3 months. It was from August to November. Plus, I was learning a new job at the time. And so people gave me less than a 10% chance of being successful. We won that race.
That's awesome.
We won that race, and it was an amazing experience. I loved the district court work. I loved meeting people. And in 2003, John Adams retired in June. And I was like, okay, this is the next logical step.
For sure.
But of course, there were the naysayers who were like, well, you've only been a judge for 4 years.
Well, and that's when I met you, because I remember when you were running for that seat.
You've only been a judge for 4 years, and are you ready for this? And rather than 9 opponents, I had 1, and it was Tim Philpott, who had the name recognition, having served in the Senate, family name, family money, and they, the naysayers were like, well, now let's see what you can do.
With a real candidate.
We get the real candidate. And I thought, well, I've run in this county before, so do the same thing. And so you met me on the trail. You knew what I was going to do and how hard I was going to work for that. And we were successful again. And I began, I loved the circuit bench, trial work, meeting the people that I met daily and trying all types of cases. I probably had every type of case that probably came through Fayette County. And if you follow my career, every high profile case that came through Kentucky ended, or came through Lexington, ended in my division. Yeah. We had most of the high profile cases that came through. Yeah. I had 15 capital murder trials that came through. And was on the trial bench for 15 years. I served under I was Judge Tom Clark's deputy or vice chief, and he was chief for 8 years, and I was his vice. And like I said, loved it. But again, my goal was to ascend a judicial hierarchy. And in 2016, Justice Van Meter was leaving the Court of Appeals to go to the Supreme Court. Yes. And so there was going to be an appointment because of the time before the general election, which was going to be in 2018. So whoever got the appointment was going to serve until 2018. And I applied for the appointment, and I didn't get the appointment. And so
who got the appointment at that time?
Rob Johnson from Scott County.
Okay, yeah, I don't know him.
And Governor Bevin's office called and to explain to me that I didn't get the appointment and why they appointed Rob Johnson. And so they were, I don't know, the person who called me was trying to be, I guess, very diplomatic, if you will, but said, you were very qualified and we enjoyed meeting you and interviewing you, but we just don't think you can win in 11 counties. Did really well in Fayette County, but, the rural counties are very different. Right. And we just don't think you can win. I said, really? Yeah. I said, why? Yeah. Why don't you think I can win? I said a few other things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so I thought, well, do you think that because I'm a woman, because I'm an African-American woman? Or why are you saying you don't think I can win? Yeah. I never understood that concept. And so I got off the phone and I said, fine. And I contacted my campaign manager and I said, what do you think about this? And she said, this is your goal. This is your dream. That's it. Absolutely, we can win.
Grind it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I said, if he had been a little nicer to me I may have just stayed where I am. I said, but he told me I couldn't do this. And that's just like more fuel to the fire.
I've got Muhammad Ali boxing gloves over there. And I love the expression. If I quit, I lose.
Right.
For me, it ain't over till I win. I'm going to grind this out.
Absolutely. And for me, it wasn't over, and I wasn't going to stop until I became a Supreme Court justice.
Which you're on your way to
Which
right
I'm
now.
on my way to.
Yeah.
And we set out, we had a year to run our campaign, and we went to 11 counties. And I went, it didn't matter. I could have an audience of 3 in Junction City, Kentucky, or I could have an audience of 200 in Fayette. It didn't matter. I was going to cover the entire spectrum of my district. And I had people in Mercer County and Boyle County say, no judicial candidates ever come to talk to us. And I did it on a regular basis. We did very well in that race. I think it was a 26,000 vote margin of victory.
Yeah.
And I've been serving on the Kentucky Court of Appeals since that time. I'm now deputy chief under Chief Judge Thompson. But one thing I'm really proud of about serving in this position is, one, my passion and commitment to the law, my passion and commitment to excellence. And in 2020, then Chief Justice John Minton, I don't know if you ever met Justice Minton.
I know the name,
but he was Chief Justice at the time, and he nominated me for an intensive master's program at Duke University. Nice. And so the program started in 2020, but it was shut down because of COVID. Yeah. So in 2021, I went to Duke, started the program at Duke, and, of course, I'm like, what am I doing? But it was phenomenal. Our instructors were judges, federal judges. Mm-hmm. We had the United States Supreme Court justices were taught some classes. And so I received my Master of Laws degree in Judicial Studies last May.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I thought, what better way to prepare for the opportunity when that opportunity is presented to me to run for the Kentucky Supreme Court than to have a master's degree, a master's degree in Judicial Studies, what they call a Master of Laws, LLM, when that opportunity presents itself.
I wonder how many people in Kentucky have that degree.
Justice Van Meter has it.
Okay.
He did it.
He's a longtime client, friend of mine. Yeah, I actually went door to door for him in his first campaign way back 20 plus years ago. I love Larry Van Meter.
He is phenomenal. We met on the campaign trail. And he was the one level up. He was always one level up. Yep. And I told him, I said, I'm going to run for the Court of Appeals when you retire. And when he got ready to run for the Supreme Court, he came and talked to me and he said, are you going to file to run? And I said, are you? And he said, yeah, I think I'm going to run. I said, well, then I'm not.
Yeah.
I said, I'm going to run when you retire. And I said, I don't care when that is. You serve as long as you want to serve. I said, but I'm gonna run when you're ready to retire. Mm-hmm. And I remember right after I graduated from Duke, I talked to him in June of 2023, and I said, "What are you thinking?" He said, "I think I'm gonna run again. That's what I'm thinking." And I said, "Okay." I like what I'm doing. I just graduated. I said, but I like what I'm doing. I'm working on my thesis and doing some other things. And I remember on 9/11, he called me and he said, are you ready? He said, I just lost a dear friend of mine and I think I'm ready to retire. I want to enjoy my grandkids. And I said, is everything okay? I wanted to make sure that it was something that he was comfortable with and was ready to do. And he said, absolutely. And he said, I feel comfortable knowing that I'm turning this over to you. Yeah. I'm handing this
That's
over
awesome.
to you. Yeah.
To have a mentor like that to literally call you up and say, it's your turn.
Awesome.
Yeah. And he's such a great guy.
And we had that respect for years. Mm-hmm. And to know that he believed in me enough and respected me enough to do that. But also, I felt like when he came to me, I said, it's your time. Yeah. It's your turn. I'm not going to run.
He's just like that. I've bumped into him in public, and he'll grab whoever he's with and introduce me.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, this is Jamie Clark. He owns Synergy here in town. And he's like the building science nerd of Central Kentucky. You need to know this guy. You know what I mean? He doesn't introduce people. He is one of those that like exuberantly, you know, talks you up and knows the good things about you, right?
Absolutely. So and he does that. Yeah.
And there's not a lot, you know, I'm on our second podcast, we interviewed Stuart Berry.
Yeah.
Stuart's the same way. You know, we titled his episode The Kingmaker because Stuart's one of those rare people who promotes others without having to take credit for it and without having to promote himself.
Absolutely.
And you know, we call the podcast Shining a Light on Good People Doing Great Things. And Larry's on my list. I need to touch him. So
yeah. He's great.
Well, there's so many great justices in the town. I mean, we are blessed to have a very good bench. And there's a cool picture of you and are there 9 on the bench in Fayette County now?
There's
the picture
one
of you guys.
did.
Yeah, you're walking across between the two buildings, and like more than half of them I have personal relationships with.
Wow.
They're either clients or personal relationship. And I'm like, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
You know?
Yeah.
So you've got some good counterparts, but you're climbing that ladder, man.
I am climbing it.
Yeah.
I am climbing it. And I, you know, for 20 years, I was on the bench. I was the only African American female on the bench. In fact, there was only one other, there was several in Jefferson County. And I kept thinking about, we've got to change this. We've got to change this. And it was 20 years. In 2020 or 2020, I think it was, Melissa Moore Murphy.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of swearing her in. And then right after her came Judge Gunther and Judge Minifield. So now we have, in Fayette County, we have 4 African women on the bench. And as you indicated, the majority of us in Fayette County are women, which is phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
Now, upon my election to the Kentucky Supreme Court, I will be the first woman to have served at all 4 levels.
That's awesome. Now, do you have a primary opponent?
I do not.
Okay.
I have an opponent, but there's just 2 of us, so we just have November.
Okay.
The November election.
Who's your opponent?
A lawyer from Landrum and Shouse. It's a she. Her name's Erin Izzo.
Okay.
I'm the only candidate with judicial experience.
Now, is that a statewide office?
It's not a statewide office. There's statewide interest in the race, obviously, because even though we're elected from districts, appellate districts, we don't just rule in those districts. So all of the cases that come to us by discretionary review or direct appeal will affect and can come from any part of Kentucky.
Okay.
So there's been interest in the race from all over Kentucky.
Yeah.
But I'm the only candidate in the race with judicial experience, and I've been on the bench in excess of, over 2 decades. Yeah. Absolutely the most qualified, and have, I think, prepared my entire adult life.
You've worked your way up to it.
For this position, absolutely. And I want to make sure that I serve as a justice for all.
Yeah.
For everyone. Everyone is entitled to that representation. And I prided myself on not only my passion for the law, but being prepared, my work ethic that came from my parents who, taught me that with hard work, you could do and be anything. And just my dedication, my integrity, my honesty, everything that I bring to the bench, my viewpoint, my focal point.
Well, you wouldn't keep leveling up the way that you have without those things, right? And
Correct.
And the respect of your peers, right?
Correct.
Because you get elected by the people, but if you don't have the respect of your peers, that word gets out,
Absolutely.
right? And when you're being endorsed by people like Larry Van Meter, I mean, that's huge because I don't think there's anybody who doesn't like that guy. I mean, he's been around town a long time, and he's had some bumps in the road, some hard knocks we all have, right? But we're still here, right?
We're still here.
I mean, in the break here a second ago, I had to hobble over to the camera to redo things because I'm 3 weeks out of back surgery. This is the first day I've worn real pants. I've been in
to be 3 weeks out, you look great.
Oh man, it's been hard. I need to shave. I need a haircut.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I am. I've been so type A and so active, and I'm the big strong man in my family, and I'm the owner of the company. And it's been so humbling, I've got a 29-year-old girl that works at the desk right outside of here that has set all my podcast stuff up today because I can't move the chairs. It's like, it's just, you feel like this big, but I'm healing slowly but surely. And I got thrown off a horse 18 months ago and I herniated a disc in the process and broke some ribs. So it's been a long road to get here, but they're telling me 3 or 4 more weeks and I'll be good as new.
Really?
So, yeah, the surgery was a success. So that's a good thing.
That's awesome.
So I want to go back and forth a little bit because you have something else cool about you that a lot of people don't know, and I only know it because we're friends on Facebook.
Right.
But you are the Jazzercise queen of Lexington. How long have you been running Jazzercise?
Well, okay, so I learned about Jazzercise in 2011.
Okay.
In January.
I feel like you've been doing it longer than that, but I feel like you've been doing it longer than that.
No, it was January of 2011.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're aware of Uptown Hounds, but I took my dog to Uptown Hounds, and on the marquee said Jazzercise coming in January or whatever. And so I was like, how do I sign Kobe up for Jazzercise? Because he needs a little exercise, And they looked at me and they're like, Pam, Jazzercise is for the mom. So the dogs get to stay an extra hour.
Oh, that's
and doggy daycare. So I went, I said, oh, that's pretty cool. And it was at 5 o'clock from 5 to 6 or something like that. And I took it and I was like, this is different. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
You dance for an hour and before you know it, you've worked out 500 or 600 calories, So after a few months, I started listening to the instructor at the time and their motto was like, take it, love it, teach it. So by then they were leaving Uptown Hounds and they found a little studio over in Buckhorn. Went over there and I was like, they had a 7:30 class over there because I couldn't get from downtown to Buckhorn by 5:30. So
I live out that way.
Yeah, so 7:30, I was taking this class, and the more I took it, the more I loved it. I'm like, you don't even realize you're working out,
right?
Okay, so I was still, I'm a judge, and I'm having all these, death penalty cases. In fact, I was in a death penalty trial when an audition came. And I thought, okay, well, how hard can this be? It's just, it's a national audition, which I didn't know at the time. National.
It's got to be a great stress reliever, though. I mean, you've got a very intense job.
Absolutely.
And get your head clear of that.
But you know what? The one thing that sold me on Jazzercise was from the time I walked in Uptown Hounds to Buckhorn to Tate's Creek, where we are now, no one knew I was a judge.
Oh, that's cool.
Just Pam.
Yeah.
And I could go into a place. I wasn't asked about a case.
Yeah.
I could just work out. It wasn't my child's in trouble, my husband or my whatever. I was like, this is awesome.
To be anonymous.
Yeah. And so one day I saw about the audition and I thought, well, I'm in court, but I'm going to leave court and drive to Cincinnati and audition. Mm-hmm. Well, little did I know it was a little more intense than that. And I failed. Like miserably.
Failure is not something you and I take easy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the instructor, who she was really mean, was telling me that I failed.
Oh, yeah.
And
did she work for Governor Bevin?
Yeah, well, no, and I wanted to say, do you know who I am? Well, for once I wanted to say, I'm a judge, So I came back. I was like, I was really mortified, and I talked to my 7:30 instructor, Mitsumi, and I said, "Did you think I can do this? Do you really think that I can teach?" And she said, "Pam, absolutely, but you got to train. You can't just go
do it. Yeah.
Do it. You've got to train." And she said, how about we work together and you not think about another audition, but when I think you're ready, then we'll sign you up. So it was about 6 months. She worked with me after class. She helped me train, build muscle mass and things like that, and diet. I mean, she worked with me all around. And so June, in fact, it was on my birthday, June 13th, 2012. Mm-hmm. She said, here's a date in June. Do you think you'll be ready? And so I went back to Cincinnati and I asked her, I said, is that same mean woman going to be there? She said, well, hopefully she will be because she'll see how good you are. And so she worked with me. And I mean, you talk about, I felt like I was in Hollywood, One, I was really prepared, so I was confident. And yeah, the instructors were like, wow, she's really, she's really good. And so I passed. And I thought, so when I came back, the owner of Jazzercise Heartland, you know, she said, well, what class do you want to teach? They didn't have any classes that started before 8 a.m.
Oh, wow.
And I said, it's really hard for me. I taught at the 7:30 class for about 6 months. I said, this is really hard for me to get here in time. I said, how about we start at, 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. And she did that.
You're better than me.
She said, there is nobody who will come to class.
No.
At 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, there are women who have to be at work at 7 and they would love to work out ahead of time. She said, if you think you can do that, then, you have my blessing. We started at different times. We tried 5, we tried 5:15, 5:30, 5:45, and 6. And the 5:30 one was a hit.
Yeah.
It was a hit. And I thought, okay, I taught 5 days a week. Started out teaching 5 days a week.
Wow.
And
that's stamina right there.
And I said I would do it for 10 years.
Yeah.
And so in 2022, after 10 years, I stepped back to 3 days a week. And I trained another young lady who loved it and loved 5:30. And when I campaigned in 2018, I was like, this is really hard to campaign and work and everything. So last September, I fell on this is my jazz right, but my left arm, and pulled something in here and had to go on medical leave from teaching jazzercise, but still went. And then now that the campaign is underway, I'll go when I can, but Joy has taken over teaching the class at 5:30.
Well, that explains why you're so feisty, though. 5 days a week teaching jazzercise.
5 days. And sometimes it was 7 if somebody was out on the weekend. But there is nothing like working out first thing in the morning.
Well, so I used to race for a pedal power cycling team 14 years ago. And the last year that I really trained hard, I did 3 triathlons that year. And I was down to like 9% body fat. I think I was 35 at the time. And man, I was so hyper-focused on my health, and it was the greatest time ever. But, life happens, and second baby came along, and wife's like, hey, you work 60 hours a week, and you spend, another 20 on your bike. Something's got to give. And at the time, I was, on board of 3 or 4 nonprofits. I was president of one. Right. And it was like, all right, I got to quit coming back off this. Well, a couple years later, I decided to start this business, right? 10 years. This month's our 10-year anniversary. Yeah. And I gained almost 100 pounds in less than 10 years. And last January, after I got thrown off a horse, I had been trying to lose weight through exercise only and not really focused on the diet.
Oh, yeah.
And I signed up for Amanda Nybert's Fast Way to Fast Loss. It's intermittent fasting. And I was physically unable to exercise. I had 3 broken ribs, and a couple months later, I realized this back issue. So only thing I could do is diet. And I lost 57 pounds.
Wow.
Focused on diet.
Really?
So now I'm hoping that once I'm recovered from this, I can bring the exercise back into it and get trimmed up. But I'm lighter than I've been in a decade. So and it feels so much better. We have horses. I picked up a 50-pound bag of horse feed about a week before my back surgery, and I'm carrying it across the feed center. And I'm like, this is what I've lost in the last year. And that, of course, I'm a foot taller than you, so I've got room to put it. But it's amazing the difference. We all lose weight differently, but diet versus exercise and stuff. But
it works hand in hand, because before I started jazzercise, when I got married in 2001. My husband is a gourmet chef, and
he's in the Army, right?
He's retired from the Army, but he was in the Army. He retired, and we met by him cooking lunch for the juvenile court division. Judge Thornton introduced us, and I thought, this guy's available, single. And he won me over with catfish nuggets and, hamburgers on Fridays. Yeah. But we got married. So I'm working, sitting all day, and then come home and he's cooking, and I was like, I'm too short to carry an extra 10 or 15 pounds. Yeah. And so when I started jazzercise, I was probably 10 or 15 pounds overweight. And, I wore sweats to, work out. And everybody else has on these leggings and these little tops and
in those robes, you really can't tell.
You really can't tell. You really can't tell, but I certainly could. And then 2 years into Jazzercise, I felt like I was where I wanted to be. Like the doctor was, my levels were great. My weight was perfect. And I could fit in those leggings and those little, short tops and loved it. Just loved how I felt. Yeah. Of course, since September when I fell and haven't been able to work out as much. And of course, on the campaign trail, you know what that means, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner. At different various events, it's coming back. And I'm like, okay, I've got to get back into this.
I've promised myself I'll never go back.
Absolutely.
I hit a point and I stepped on the scale one day and I was like, all right, I'm done. It's time to get serious about this.
And you know when that is.
Well, and I'm not getting any younger. You know, I'm still in my 40s, but it's. At 35, I could gain 15 pounds over the winter and I'd lose it by the beginning of May, But at, late 40s, that it doesn't work that way anymore.
Right.
We're not getting any younger. And so, we talked about the reason for this podcast is because there are, in my mind, about 250 people that really make this community move. There's a whole lot of people, we talked in Stuart Perry's podcast, the statistic is that only 3% of the population ever volunteer for nonprofit work.
Wow.
Yeah. So all these boards and committees, I was a nonprofit junkie for years and in a bunch of groups, and you see the same people over and over, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this was, introduce more people to the general public, because there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that, well, and maybe as a judge, they see you on this altar or this pedestal, right? But one of the reasons I brought up Jazzercise, you're just pay them, just pay them, right? And that's the thing that people need to be exposed to folks. And one of the things that I'm fortunate with is I have a lot of friendships like yours and some of the other folks that I've done that are people that not everybody has access to. And I want to share your story, and talk about it because it's a great community. And your husband's got a pretty cool story. We've done some work for you recently, and one of my guys that does the estimating came in and like, he's the nicest guy on the planet, and we're going to go fishing later, So what do you love about where Lexington is? And what do you think, obviously you're on the accountability side, but there's proactive things we can do so the accountability side doesn't have to do, right? If that makes sense. So what do you love about Lexington and what do you think we need to work on as a community?
Well, one thing that I loved about Lexington that made me stay was its beauty.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Its beauty, the landscaping, the horse farms. I think Lexington is one of the few places where the airport isn't surrounded by hotels and parking structures.
Yeah, I love flying into Lexington over Calumet.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Or when I first came into Lexington and I got lost, I was on New Circle Road. I'm like, this road just goes around in a circle. Like, this is amazing. Like, half of it is horse farms and the other. I thought that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, not so much for traffic, but
not so much for traffic. I was just getting ready to say that if there was a flaw that I would like to see corrected, that would be its traffic patterns. Yeah. And I've been involved in some meetings with a few organizations that I work, boards that I work on, Lexington Forum being one.
Are you on the board?
I'm on the board of the Lexington Forum.
I was president in 05-06, and I was on the board for about 6 years. I love that organization.
Yeah, very good organization. And we've had panel discussions with respect to the urban service area and the development. And one of the things I kept saying is, why do we keep putting more and more infills or more and more building and expansion, but no more roads?
Right.
No more roads.
Yeah.
And it was said that the comprehensive plan service area was such that they didn't want to change that traffic pattern. If they didn't want to add subways, they didn't want to add, freeways or, things. I'm not real sure why I understand that. It's interesting because in Youngstown, growing up in Youngstown, Lordstown and the steel mills and all of that made the city dirty and industrialized, but they had more freeways and more expressways that you could hop on and get anywhere in that area in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
The beauty of Lexington and what I hear from friends of mine who have moved away is that even with the traffic problems that we think we have, they're nothing compared to either big city traffic
You go to
problem.
DC or Atlanta. God, Atlanta's awful.
And I kid you not, Jamie, I will fly out of Lexington. I don't care however many stops I have to make. Usually I just have to make one.
Yeah.
But I can get to the airport and get home in 20 minutes.
My wife loves to go to the Cincinnati airport and hang me from no. I'm going to Denver later this month, and I paid extra to fly out of Lexington.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm okay with it.
Because I can sit at home. If the flight's canceled, I'm still at home.
Yep.
They'll say it's delayed. I'm still at home.
Well, and we have a great airport.
It's a great airport.
We really do.
It's a great airport. It's great access. Lexington is a gem.
It really is.
In the sense, the people, and but for traffic. And people talk about, the crime, and that's a concern, but not just with Lexington. That's a concern everywhere.
Nationwide.
It's nationwide.
The homeless issue. Jenny Ramsey right down here at Catholic Action, she recently said there's 72 homeless camps in Fayette County.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's definitely something we've got to address.
And it will be a dream of mine if homelessness and the unhoused if that problem was eradicated. Yeah. What is the solution to that problem?
Well, it's homelessness and drug abuse are so tied together. The drug problem, it's driving so many issues in this area. And,
it is.
We're on the Winchester Road corridor, and, we've got 2 plasma centers where you sell your blood, and then the Catholic Action Center, and then there's down here, the Sportsman Motel. Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, in the park behind it, I mean, there's some rough stuff.
Yeah.
And we've got to focus on doing some cleanup on some of that.
I was a drug court judge from 2011 to 2018 when I took the bench. And it was a great program. It is a great program. It's still in existence. It's a great program, great success stories.
Yeah.
But one of the issues that I found, even with being a drug court judge and a judge, is that if you don't remove the environment, if you don't deal with the underlying issues, and someone comes out of treatment and goes back into the same situation, you're going to have the same problem.
Yep.
You are absolutely going to have the same problem.
We've done some second chance work here, hiring folks that have come out of some of those situations, and sadly, it's never been a good fit. There was one of my competitors that used to advertise that they were a felony-free workplace, and it was a bit of a joke because like 75% of their staff were subcontractors, and their employment was felony-free, but their subcontractors. We won't talk about that. But everybody has their thing. We're running a little bit long, so I wanted to give you the opportunity. Last 5 minutes of the podcast. What do you want to communicate to the people out there? And this is apolitical, but you're running for office, and it's a platform, right? So what do you want to communicate to the general public out there? I love Pam. I'm going to vote for Pam. I'm going to tell everybody else to vote for Pam. What's your elevator speech? Your last, obviously you've got amazing credentials and you've climbed the ladder, and you've, in my opinion, you've earned the right to be there, right? Not that it's a right as much as a privilege, but what do you want everybody to know that this is why Pam should be on the Supreme Court?
Well, first, let me say thank you for having me here. I am running, let me say what my 8 counties are. Okay. I went from 11 counties in 2018 to 8 counties in which I will be on the ballot in the fall. Okay. And those counties are Bourbon, Clark, Fayette, Franklin, Jessamine, Madison, Scott, and Woodford counties. Again, the race in the Supreme Court is impacted across the entire Commonwealth of Kentucky. Sure. But I will be on the ballot in those counties. Everyone who sees this podcast will know someone in one of those counties.
For sure.
And I would humbly ask for their vote, for your vote. I am the best candidate for this position, not only because of my experience on the bench for the past 25 years, but because of my passion for the law. And my preparedness for the law. There is no one on the bench anywhere in the Commonwealth of Kentucky that can say they will outwork me or has any more passion or dedication for this position than I do. And I bring with this compassion based on, again, my experiences. And I've seen how the judicial system and decisions impact our community, impact our lives.
For sure.
And our court system should be a bastion of the community, a pillar of the community. Yeah. And the decisions that we make affect everyone. And the court system, the judicial system is there for everyone. And that's one thing that I want everyone to know, is that I'm not a justice for a few. I'm a justice and will be a justice for all.
That's amazing. That's a great way to wrap it up. So, well, I want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. This is episode 7. So we've got 8 and 9 coming up. We've already got them booked. So I'm hoping to have 25 by end of summer, So, thank you. And I've been blessed to have you. I've had a delightful conversation. And one more time, we get to shine a light on good people doing great things.